Hi there, welcome back. Today we will be doing the partial walkthrough of Cambridge International AS and A-Level Computer Science for Paper 4 Practical. We will be doing the October/November 2022 series, and we are doing the second variant, which is 9618/42. What do you need for this walkthrough? You will need 2022 October/November 9618/42 question paper, mark scheme, evidence.document. So this document is used to store all the answer from the question as well as the characters.txt. So you will need this for one of the question. As usual, you can just download all the files by just doing a basic Google search, or you can use my link in the description below. And now let's get started. A computer program is needed to store jobs in order of priority. Each job has a job number, for example 1, 2, 3, and a priority from 1 to 10, with 1 being the highest priority and 10 the lowest. The program stores the jobs in a global 2D array. The pseudocode declaration for the array is declare jobs array 0 to 99, 01 of integer. For example, job 00 stores the job number of the first job. Job 01 stores the priority of the first job. The global variable number of jobs stores the number of jobs currently in the array. As I always tell my students, don't rush into the question first. So before we start, just do some highlighting and also do some visualization first. So let's look at the major variables for this question first. For this question, the first main variable will be this jobs here. It means that we have this 2D array called jobs. And next, number of jobs as a global variable. So this question is quite straightforward. Basically, you only have two variables, which is jobs as the array and number of jobs as the other integer variable. And now let's do some visualization first. So for 2D array, normally what I do here is that I will always draw a table to help with my visualization. First of all, I will just draw a table first. So this is my table here. And next, I have two columns here, which are job number and priority. So let me just change this pen to drawing pen here. Maybe just this one will do. So we just split this into two columns here, and this will be the column name. And what will be the column name for this table? So I can just write down here. So this one here will be job number. Let me just change this to white color so that it's easier to see. And next will be priority. So I have another text here, which is priority. And then let me just move this a bit. Okay, now it looks better. And let's look at the data type for these two columns. So if you look at this here, the job number here should be an integer. So I can just write here integer. And then for priority, it's also a integer. So I can just write a integer here as well. And then let's look at the number here. So does it say any numbers here? So for priority is from 1 to 10. So let me just write down here as well. So ranging from 1 to 10. It means that for this column here, it can be anything from 1 to 10. And how about this job number? For this job number, they don't really mention what is the requirement. So I can just put some random number inside. For example, I can just put 1, 2, 3, and then maybe somewhere down here will be 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9. Let's say 7, 8, 9 has a priority of 1, and then 4, 5, 6 has a priority of 5, and etc. Maybe I just remove this first, so it's easier to see. I move this to here, and then here we just change it to 9 here, and then yeah, now it's look better. Okay. So this is the dummy table here, and then we just do some dot 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 here. Dot 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 dot. And then how many rows are there? So if you look at the definition here, is 0 to 99. It means that it actually has 100 rows. So I can just do something like this here. Yeah, just draw it here. So from here to here will be 100 rows. And looking at the index, it will start from 0. So it's a bit different from paper 2. Paper 2, the index always starts from 1, but for paper 4, the index normally starts from 0, which is the typical use case. So it will be 0 to 99. Yeah, just write index here so that I know what it means. And then is there anything else? This will be 0, 1. So I will just write it here 0, and then here 1. So for example, let's say when I want to choose this here, 1, 2, 3 here. This is actually jobs. And then the row is row 0. column is also column 0. So this is how you get this 1, 2, 3 based on the jobs array. And a lot of my students always forget about this and this. They always get confused between these two. So how I ask them to memorize is, this stands for row, and then this stands for column, which also stands for raging cat. So you can always think of this raging cat when you have 2D array. So you will always remember that the first number stands for row and the second number stands for column. So this is the visualization for this question 1. I think we are more or less done with the visualization and also the overall structure for this question 1. And now let's go into question A. So this is question A. To help us with our problem solving, I actually put the diagram that we drew just now on the right here. So this is the array with the job number column, priority column, this is all the index here, and then this is the number of jobs variable. And now let's look at the question. Write program code to declare the global 2D array jobs and the global variable number of jobs. Save your program as question 1 underscore n22 and then copy and paste the program code into part 1a in the evidence document. So we won't be doing this because this is just like copying the code into the evidence document. We will be just writing the answer straight into this website here. So this is how we're gonna do the walkthrough. Instead of me just repeating the answer from a mark scheme, for every question, I'm gonna give you some prompts to think of what is the answer for each of the question. For example, for this question A, I'm gonna ask you some question and then maybe I give you like 3 seconds, or you can just pause the video as you think of the answer. And after 3 seconds or so, I will just show the answer. And now let's get started. For example, for this question A here, this is what I have written beforehand. For Python, when we define the variables outside function definition, it will be a global variable. So for this question, to define a global variable for Python is actually quite simple. We just have to define the variable outside the function, which is at the root level of the code. And next, since Python variables are dynamically typed, which means the variable type will be assigned based on the value being assigned. We do not have to define whether it's an integer or 2D array. So comparing to Java or Visual Basics, this dynamic type means that, let's say I assign a value to the Python variable, the Python will automatically assign the variable type to this variable. So for example, I say like hello equal to 3. It means that right now, Python will interpret this hello variable as an integer data type. And for this question, they are asking us to declare the 2D array jobs and the global variable as the number of jobs. Definitely, if you're writing in Java or Visual Basic, you have to say that this job is a 2D array and then this number of jobs is an integer. But for Python, the answer is actually quite straightforward. So what would be the answer? So we can just write jobs. So this is the array name. So let me just add the array name as well. So just hold on here. Let me just add jobs. So this will be the name of this array here. And then next, let me continue typing here. So jobs. And then next would be the number of jobs. That's it. So this is actually the answer for this question A. Because for Python, you do not have to define the variable type. But definitely if you look at the answer scheme, they also added some comment. They say that this is a global array and then 100 by 2 elements. And next they also say that this number of jobs is a global integer. Just like that. So this is the final answer for this question A. It's actually quite simple. But personally, I actually prefer the answer to be something like this. For example, I would write something like this. Jobs equal to a list here. And then number of jobs equal to 0. It means that I'm telling the program that this job is actually a list. So it can be a 1D array, 2D array, or 3D array, or etc. It doesn't matter. And this number of jobs is actually an integer once I assign a default value of 0 to this variable here. So this is actually my preferred answer. But definitely, if you follow the answer scheme, this should be the answer here. And next, let's go to B. For B, the procedure initialize stores -1 in each of the array elements and assign 0 to number of jobs. Write program code for the procedure initialize. So this is the question here. And let's look at the prompts. So the first prompt will be this one here. The key idea here is that we will be updating both jobs array and number of jobs inside the procedure. It means that I will be writing a procedure and then I will be updating the value inside this procedure. We have to use the keyword global within the procedure because let's say we want to update a variable outside the function within a function, we have to use the keyword global. It means that the variable inside the procedure of functions is actually pointing to the variable outside the procedure of function. So for example, I have declared these jobs and number of jobs outside the procedure. So when I want to change this variable here, I have to actually use the keyword global inside the procedure. So this is the key thinking for this question B here. And next, for number of jobs, it's just assignment, which is pretty easy. So basically just number of jobs equal to 0, that's it. And the tricky part for this question will be, how do we write the values into the 2D array? So it means that for jobs array, we will just insert row by row with both columns -1 until we finish inserting 100 rows. So looking at the picture here, basically, we can just create a row. For example, like row 1 here, we have 2 columns. So for example, 1, 2, 3, and then 9. And then we'll just append this into the array. And then we just keep appending the row until it reach 100. So this is one of the techniques. And next, which loop to use and what is the range? How do you insert 1 row with 2 columns into an array? So when you do this question, these are all the prompts or questions that you have to ask yourself before writing the answer. For example, for this which loop to use, since this is a count control loop, most of you just use a for loop. And what is the range? The range would be 0 to 100 using the range function. And remember that for this array, we have 100 rows, but the index starts from 0. So when I write the range function later, I will be writing range 0, 100. And then you might be asking me, why not 0, 99? Because for this range function, it always stops at index n-1. Means that you will stop at 100 minus 1, which is the 99 index. Therefore, this is the key information that you have to know before writing the full function or procedure. And now let's write this together. So I hope you managed to write the answer on your notes or on your computer before I review the answer. And now let's look at the answer. So I will just write definition, initialize, make sure the spelling is correct. When you define a procedure or function, make sure you remember the colon. So I have a colon here and then enter here. And then I will be defining the variables for this procedure here. So let's say the Python console that you are using doesn't do the auto indentation. So what do? It's actually quite simple. So let's look at this first. For example, let's say I go back to here. When I click enter, this Jupyter Notebook actually knows that I'm actually defining a procedure or function, so it will do the auto indentation. But let's say the console that you're using doesn't do this, it's okay. You can always do a tab or just 4 space. So for example here, I can actually just do a tab here on my keyboard, or I can just do 4 space. 1, 2, 3, 4. But in general, I always like to do tab for Python. So always remember that for Python, indentation is very important. A lot of time, you realize that your code doesn't work and then you just try whole day trying to fix the code. But in the end, it's always the indentation issue. So let me just go back to here again and just let it auto indent. So enter here. And now let's start with the global variables. So for example, I will write global. So this is the keyword here. And then what will be the variable's name? So it will be jobs. And then global number of jobs. Okay, so we have done defining the variables, and next would be the loop. So for the loop, as I say, I will be using the for loop. For x in range, and then 0 stops at 100. It means that it will stop at index 99 for this function. And then make sure you have this colon here, and then enter here. And then we can just write jobs. So this is the array name. Append. And then I can just put my first row here. So my first row will be this one here. So for example, -1, -1. It means that right now, I am actually appending one single row to this array here. So for example, this first row here is going to be like -1, -1 at index 0, since we start from 0 here. And that's it. And then you just repeat this for 100 times until you finish filling up the whole array with -1. So we are done with the filling out of jobs array. And the final step will be just assigning value to the number of jobs variable. So it's actually quite easy. So we just click enter here and just write So be careful on the indentation. Now we have to exit the for loop. So right now you see this here is actually the same line as the for loop here. So number of jobs equal to 0. That's it. So this is the definition of initialize. And definitely if you want, you can try the function. You can just click enter here and then just run initialize. And then just click on run to see whether it's looking as expected. So I can just click on run here and just wait for a bit. And let's look at this. It says that it has some error. So let's look at what is the error here. Job is not defined. This is because I haven't run the previous declaration in A. So let's go back to A first. So in A here, this is the official answer here. But let me show you something. Let's say I comment this out. And then I run this. It will actually throw error. Because for Python, you are not supposed to do like this. For example, just write jobs without anything. So what I could do to fix this is, I can just comment this out and run my preferred command here, which is this one here. Because it doesn't matter, I would say that jobs is like an empty list, and then I can just say, oh, let me just create an empty list for these job variables, and then just assign number of jobs as 0. So let me just run this command here. So let me just run this. So right now it's looking fine. And then let's go back to B here. And then I will run the B again. So let me just run the B here. And let me just also print out the jobs and number of jobs. Okay, maybe I just print the number of jobs first. Print number of jobs and jobs. And let me just run the function now. So let me just run this. That's it. So if you look at this right now, we actually printed out this in number of jobs, which is 0. And then this jobs array, which has -1 for every single row here. So this is the answer for question B. So let me just delete all this testing first. Let me just delete all this. And then now let's look at question C. For C, the procedure add job takes a job number and priority as parameters, stores the job in the next free array element, outputs added if the job was successfully stored in the array, outputs not added if the job was not successfully stored in the array. Write program code for the procedure add job. So for this question C is another procedure. And now let's look at the prompts first. So the first prompt will be 2 input parameters, job number and priority. It means that for this procedure, we have 2 input parameters, which is job number or the priority. How do we know which is the next free array element in jobs array? So this is a very important question. Like, how do I know which index is free starting for this array? For example, for this use case here, let's say I have filled up like row 0, row 1 and row 2 here. I know that this index 3 is the next free index. Therefore, I can insert my new record into this third index here. We can just use number of jobs as the index to track since it starts from 0. Because this number of jobs actually starts from 0, so we can use this as the index for our array to insert the new row. For example, this number of jobs starts from 0. It means that I will write like array with index 0 and then the new entry. And then after that, I will just increase this number of jobs to 1. And then the next will be array 1 and then the next entry and etc. And the next question is, what is the possible case that we can't store the elements into the jobs array? Well, when the array is full, which means when the value of the number of jobs is 100. So as I say, as we are adding the new rows into the array, we will just increase number of jobs by 1. So by the time number of jobs reach 100, we know that this array is already full. So this is how we know that the array is actually full already. Take note that to store 100 elements in array, we are using index 0 to index 99. So index 0 all the way to 99 to actually store 100 elements. So I will just write 99 here. 99. And this is the last row. Print not added statement when array is full. It means that number of jobs is currently at 100. Then print added statement when array is not full and assign value into jobs row by row. So right now, just pause the video and write your answer now. So first of all, I will start with the definition of the procedure. So what is the procedure name again? The procedure name is add job. Okay, so let me just write definition add job. And then what will be the input parameters? It will be these two here, the job number and the priority. So I can just write job number, comma, priority. By the way, for this paper, you can use any casing, but what I would recommend is using the Pascal casing. It means that we will always start the first word with capital letter, and then the second word with capital letter, and the rest are all small letters. So for example, this job number here, so this J is actually capital letter, and this N is actually capital letter, and then just write colon here, and then enter here. And that will be, as usual, declaring the global variable. So what will be the global variables? It will be the two variables there, which is global number of jobs, and then global jobs. So right now, I have to write some if-else statement. It means that let's say the array is full, I will be just printing not added. And let's say the array is not full and still has some empty space, I will just start editing all the values inside the array. So let me just write the if-else statement. So I can just write if number of jobs equal 100. So as I say, when the number of jobs hit 100, it means that this array is full by now. Therefore, I can write this if statement. And then I will just say print not added. And next will be the else statement. So let me just enter here. And then remember the indentation. For else, it should be the same indentation as the if statement. So let me just backspace here. And then else, and then colon. And right now, I will just start adding the input into the array. So I can write something like this, jobs. And then number of jobs. So as I say, we are using this number of jobs as the index for this array here. And I can just write equal to. So you'll be inserting this row into the first row. So just imagine that, let's say, initially, everything is empty here. For example, this is not here, this is not here, this is not here. These are not here. So everything is empty. So we will start from number of jobs equal to 0 here. So let me just draw 0 here. So this is 0. And then the index is pointing at 0. And then I will be just adding the input here into this first row here. So these two first row here. Just write something like this. And then it will be job number, comma, priority. Just like that. It means that let's say I pass in some value into this function here. I will be just adding this particular row here into my first row. For example, let's say like 1 here. And then this priority ranging from 1 to 10. So I can just write 10 here. So this is my first row here. And next will be print added based on the statement here. So I will be printing added after this statement. It means that I have added this row into the array here. And then not to forget that we have to increase the number of jobs by 1 now, because right now inside the array we have 1 job now. So instead of 0, it will be 1 now. So you can just write number of jobs equal to number of jobs plus 1. So right now, let me just test the procedure. So for example, I can write something like this. Print jobs array before addition, comma, and then jobs, first row here, and then add job. Let's say I will be adding this example here, 1 and 10. And then, oh, there's some error here. Should be a comma here. And let me just remove this with a space. And then next, print jobs array after addition, and then comma jobs 0. So right now I am actually printing the array before addition and the array after addition. So let me just run the code. So this is the initial value that we assign to this jobs array here. And then once we finish adding the value, it will be added. And this is jobs array after addition, which is 1, 10. So this is the first row that we insert into the array here. And then we can just delete the statement. So let me just delete everything here. Since we have tested out the function, let me just delete everything here. And then now let's go to next question. For question D, the main program should call the procedure initialize and then use the add job procedure to store the following jobs in the order given. So this is the order of the job, and then write program code for the main program and perform the task described. So this is quite an easy question. So for example, this is the prompt here. The first step is to call the procedure initialize, pretty straightforward. And the second step is to call the procedure add job with input parameters as shown. So these are all the input parameters. It means that I have to call the add job procedure for 5 times here. And then both inputs are integers. So this is just a reminder here. And now let's just do this together. And as usual, please pause the video and write down the answer on your paper. This will help you to learn the most. So the final answer for D will be this one here. So I can just write initialize. So hope I've spelled this correctly. Yeah, I think it's correct. And next will be a job. And then both are integer, which are pretty straightforward. So I can just write 12, 10. Then let me just copy everything so that it makes my life easier. How many of them? 5 of them. 4, 5. And then let me just change all of this. 5 to 6, 9. And next will be 33 and 8. And then 12 and 9. And then 78, 1. And then let's run this. So let me just run this. And yeah, that's it. All are added. So right now, this number of jobs array here will have 5 new rows added based on the information here. And now let's go to the next question. For E, when a new job has been added, the array is sorted into ascending numerical order of priority using an insertion sort. Write program code for the procedure insertion sort to sort the data into ascending numerical order of priority. Let's look at the prompt first. The array or the table has 2 columns. So as I say, we have job number. So look at this picture on the right here, we have job number and priority here. We need to sort based on priority in ascending order. It means that let's say we have a few value here. So let me just draw some value here. For example, I have like 1, 2, 3, and then 9 here, and then 4, 5, 6, and then 2 here. We are supposed to sort this table based on priority. It means that this 2 will go to the top here, and then this 9 will remain as the second row here, and then 10 will go to the third row here. So something like that. It means that we are supposed to sort both priority and job number based on the priority column. And how do we do this? We are sorting the table or array using insertion sort. So I hope while you're watching this video, you know what insertion sort is, because if you know insertion sort by heart, this should be quite doable. So for example, this is my sample array here, 10, 9, 1, 4, 7, and I want to sort this array using insertion sort. So this is the full code here. So I have all the comments here. So for those of you who still don't understand what insertion sort is, definitely try to refer your textbook or refer to your notes, or just pause the video and take a screenshot of this, because I won't be covering insertion sort in this video because that will take another 20 to 30 minutes to cover. I will just assume that you have learned insertion sort and know what this sorting is doing. So looking at this code, this is not the only solution. For example, let's say you change the index name or your index is a bit different, it can be accepted also. It's just that this is one of the solution or one of the code for this insertion sort. And let's say if you have your own version and it's working, by all means just use your own version. So what I'm going to do right now is a bit different. Instead of writing the code from scratch, I'm going to use the insertion sort that I have as the base code, and then I will be just doing some modification to come up with the final solution. So as I say, if you know this sorting by heart, this question is actually very doable. So let me just copy and paste the code here. So let me just command V here. So this is the code that I have on the top here. And now let's just do some modification. So first of all, let's start with this. Length of array equal to length sample array, which is get the length of the array. So for this question here, we actually have the length of the array, which is the number of jobs. So I can just change this to number of jobs. That's it. So let's say you're confused on why this number of jobs is actually the length of the array, because for this example here, remember that let's say it was empty here, the number of jobs was 0. And then when I add one new row, the number of jobs will increase to 1. So does it mean that when the number of jobs is 1, it actually means that there is one element inside the array? The answer is yes. Therefore, the number of jobs is actually the length of the array. And definitely for this question, I have to add a global here, because this is not a local variable, it's a global variable. So let me just write global here. And next, if I in range 1 to length of array, so length of array, change this to number of jobs. And then key is equal to sample array I, which is the current element to be inserted. So for this one here, we have to insert 2 elements. Why? Because this is a 2-way array. We have 2 columns to sort. So it means that looking at this example on the right here, once we know this priority and we start sorting, we have to sort the job number as well. So for this key, we actually have 2 keys here. So let me just do something like this. I will just copy this here and paste it here. And then let me just name this as key 1 and then key 2. Well, actually I should name this as job number and priority, but I think it doesn't matter because I want to change the code below later on. So if I change the variable name here, it's very hard to keep track later. So I just leave it as key 1 and key 2. And then this sample array, just now we have a sample array as the global variable. So right now, I have to change this to my array, so which is the jobs array. So it means I have to write jobs here. jobs here, and then jobs here. And then for these jobs here, this is a global variable. So I have right here, global jobs. Because we are using the global variable inside this procedure as well. So, and then what else? So key one here, this is the row, and then this is the column. Remember, raging cat. So I have to write here, 0 here, and then 1 here. And then for referencing, let me just write here, current element to be inserted. Then let me just change this element to job number. And this is the priority. So that is more obvious. And next, j is equal to I minus 1. This is just the index, it doesn't matter. And j is more than or equal to 0 sample array. So for this sample array, I have to change to jobs here. So let me just change this. Okay, so this is the condition. So for this condition, okay, remember that we are sorting by priority. It means that the comparison here is based on the priority column. So let me just change this. This will be based on the second column, which is priority. So let me just write 1 here. And then this key will be key 2. That's it. So this is the while condition here. And then next, sample array j plus 1 is equal to sample array j. So this is actually doing the swapping now. So let me just change this to jobs first. And then remember that we have 2 columns. So I have to do this twice. Let me just copy this one. And then let me write down the first column here. So the first column will be 0 here, and then 0 here, and then 1 here, and then 1 here. And then this j equal to j minus 1 is just playing around with the index. So I just leave it as default here. And then finally will be this row here. So this statement here is actually insert the key at the correct position. So I can just do a copy here as well. Let me just copy below here first. And then just change this to jobs. And then this is going to be key 1, key 2, and then key 1 actually stands for 0 here, and then 1 here. And yeah, that's it. This should be the insertion sort for this question here. And let me just copy this also, so that is more obvious. Insert the key at the correct position. Let me just change this to insert the job number. And this will be insert the priority. So as I say, if you know this by heart, this question is very doable. And now let's just try to run this procedure here to make sure everything is okay. So let me just run this procedure here. Insertion sort, and then just run this. Alright, there's no error. This is a tick here, so it's good. And now let's go to the next question. For F, the procedure print array outputs each job number and priority on a line. For example, 1, 2, 3, priority 1, 39, priority 3, 1, 2, 0, priority 7. Write program code for the procedure print array. Basically, you have to loop through the array row by row based on total number of rows. So how do you know total number of rows? You can actually use this variable here. Number of jobs variables actually indicate the total number of rows. Print out the job number in column 1 and priority in column 2. So most probably you need to convert the output to string since the input is an integer. It means that this job number and priority are both integer. So when we write the print statement, we have to convert the integer into string in order to print the output. So I hope you have written down the answer on your paper, and now let's do together. So for example, this one here, I can just write definition, print array, and then colon here. And then the first thing that I ask is, what are the variables being used? It will be the number of jobs variable as well as the job variable. So it will be global number of jobs, and next will be global jobs. So these two are the variables. And next, which loop to use to print out this thing here? So we can just use a for loop here. So I can just write something like this. For x, let me just remove this. X in range 0, since we start from index 0, and then ends at number of jobs. And then next will be printing statement. So we'll be printing. So let me just copy this format here. So it will be something like this. Jobs, x, and then first column, so you're going to be 0, then a comma, and then open quotation, and then space here, priority, and then comma, jobs, x1. So it means that this is the row x with the first column, and then row x with the second column, and then we have a space here, so be careful on the space here, and then we are printing out all this here. So this should be the final answer, but definitely for good practice purpose, we can always add this string here. So I can add a string here, string function here, to convert the integer into string. Although by right, even without this string, it should still work, but it's okay, we just put string as good practice. Also string here. And yeah, that's it. This should be the final answer for F. And now let's go to G. The main program needs to sort the array and then output the contents of the array. Amend the main program by writing program code to call procedures insertion sort and print array. So this question is just a 3-mark question because you can just call insertion sort and print array procedure and it's just 3 marks. So I can just write something like this. Insertion sort and then print array. That's it. This should be the answer for question GI here. And the last question is test your program, take a screenshot of the output. So the prompt will be just call everything from 1A to 1GI and print out the output. So we can just call everything that we have defined from question 1A all the way to 1GI and then look at the output. So let me just copy everything from 1A to 1GI. Definitely in the real exam, you don't have to do that. You can just go to this question here, run these 2 procedures, and then look at the output, and then just take the screenshot and just paste it into your evidence document. But for demo's sake, I will just show you how to run everything together. So the first thing that I will do is, I will just clear the runtime first. It means that I will be clearing all the variables that was being defined and everything that was being defined first, just in case there was some initial values there. So let me just run this restart runtime here. And then yes, and right now it has cleared all the variables. So let me just copy everything into this question here, starting from all the way to question 1 here. So you'll be starting from this one here. So definitely, as I say, the question, this is the answer here. But if you write this as the first statement, it will throw error. So we'll start from this statement here. So Command C here, and let me just copy here. So this is the final answer here. So for example, we have this jobs equal to empty list here, and this is the definition, the initialize procedure, the add job procedure, and then we are just adding all the new entries into the arrays, and this is the insertion sort, and then we have this print array, and finally we will just call these 2 procedure. And now let's just try to run everything together. So I will just press on this run button here. And yeah, that's it. This will be the final answer for this question. So look at this, 1, 8, 9, 9, 10. It means that our result here is most probably correct. And before we end, I have actually written a full article on the solution here so that you can just refer to the article when you're rushing or you just want to understand more without looking at the video. So you can just look at this article here. So I'll be putting the link in the description below. So let me just delete everything here first. So this will be the full article here. So this is what you will need, and this is question 1, and these are the prompts, and this is the answer and everything. So this include A all the way to the end of the question for question 1. If you have learned something new, just comment down below. Thank you, and I will see you again then. Bye bye.